Hey, hope you're well. In this one, I want to talk a little bit about workshop lighting, something that becomes a little more complex as you start to accommodate shooting video. This video is sponsored by Bluetti, more from them a little later. So when I first took this place on 20 odd years ago, it came with fluorescent light tubes. These were completely standard back then, and lots of workplaces like this, shops and offices too, had them, and they were honestly pretty horrible lights to work under because although it was an even light, it was pretty harsh, and the tubes themselves would often flicker, the fittings buzzed, and they could be slow or temperamental to start as well. Back in my handyman days, I used to carry around a whole selection of fluorescent starters, little capacitors, to try and resolve problems for people. The upside was that the tubes lasted a long time. They were very energy efficient compared to the normal light bulbs that we had back then, which is just as well. They lasted a long time there because the tubes themselves are pretty nasty things to dispose of, as they are full of mercury, something to bear in mind if you ever do need to remove any, like I had to in the new workshop. Flickering lights in a workshop can also have the extra hazard of creating a strobe effect, where something that was moving like a table saw blade could appear to be static or moving very slowly, so definitely not what you'd want. These days, of course, if you're looking for workshop lights, then an LED batten light like this one is pretty much the perfect replacement. Cheap to buy, cheap to run. They put out perfect flicker-free lighting and plenty of it per fitting, often in a range of tones from warm white to full daylight color balance like this one. Unfortunately, these LED battens weren't around when I started changing the lights in my workshop here almost 10 years ago, so I went with simple flat LED panels. I've done a few videos on these. The panels themselves are nothing special, just the kind of thing that you'd find in most offices these days, and I've got to say they've been excellent. The first ones I had didn't last that long, but the more recent ones have been solid, and I've just bought another 10 of these to go in the new space for less than 150 quid. So you put up daylight balanced LED lights, cheap to buy and cheap to run. You get plenty of light for your money, and you can see what you're doing. What's not to like? Well, the problem comes when you start to shoot a little bit of video, because while plenty of light is good in a workshop for making stuff and for filming too, when it comes to this part of the video, the piece to camera or talking head, well, that's when we could do with something that's a little easier on the eye. Now, anyone with a little bit of knowledge of photography or video will know that creating this kind of environment where the background is a little bit darker and out of focus, so the little specular highlights flare out nicely. None of this is difficult, but without going too far down the photo or video rabbit hole, it does take you in the exact opposite direction of what you want from normal everyday workshop lighting, especially in a smaller space like this one. I've managed it here by having these last panels switchable independently, and that's something I'm going to be carrying over into the new space. The new workshop is more open, and I'm planning on 3 banks of 4 LED panels in similar sort of wooden frames to the ones that I have here. I want the furthermost bank of lights to be independently switchable, as will the 2 LED panels in the ends of the other 2 frames. So that should give me enough workshop light overall and enough separation when they're switched off for the talking heads. That's what I'm aiming for, at least. The frames are simple 3x1 redwood or Scots pine, just screwed together. They're 2.8 meters long and made to take the 600mm LED panels with a little bit of room to spare, and the central divider ties the sides together nicely so it doesn't get too twisty. Now, you might remember that my local timber yard closed down a little while back, and this is the first time I've actually bought timber unseen. It was mostly okay, but the corner of one frame was definitely pulled out of shape and had to be re-educated by clamping it to the bench and pulling on one corner while it was left overnight. And I've got to say, it worked really very well. Once the frames were all finished, and yes, it would have been so much easier to make them in the new space, thanks for noticing that. Once they were all done, I decided to paint the frames. So after the screw holes were all filled and sanded, I took them into the new space where they were a little bit easier to work on while I was priming and painting them. Now, as I mentioned before, I am having the whole new workshop rewired, and typically the electrician had the power off for testing when I needed to be drilling a few holes in the wall. And I know that my cordless drill struggles in this tough engineering brick, and that's where today's video sponsor comes in, Flourescents. Flourescents make portable power stations, and this is the Elite 300, a compact but powerful unit that can deliver over 3 kilowatts on demand, but is barely any bigger than the 2 kilowatt models. Flourescents do make bigger, more powerful units than this, and smaller models too, of course, so this one is probably the sweet spot between power, size and weight. I'm putting in fixings for the sink and water heater to come, and as well as working the LED lights, I had no trouble at all powering my SDS drill at the same time. And running on its own, the Elite 300 could keep that 4-foot LED batten lamp powered for almost 70 hours if that was something I needed to do. When the power's back on, I can charge this up off a standard UK socket in under 3 hours, and there's an optional solar panel kit if you want to go fully off-grid. You can also monitor and control your power station from your smartphone using the Flourescents app, where you can set up timers and schedules. And while there are lots of obvious outdoorsy uses for something like this, it could also be an easy way to get power to your workshop or shed at the end of your garden without digging it all up just to lay a cable. Add the solar panels to your purchase, and you could have a garden workshop free from any future bills or price hikes too. Drilling done, I had no trouble powering the vacuum for cleaning up afterwards, and as well as the 2 standard British square pin 230-volt AC sockets, there's something like 9 other outlets to choose from, including a pair of USB-Cs and some specialist ports for your camper van or caravan. I'll link to the full spec in the description below. I am getting a new floor put down in a few weeks' time, so I need to keep this space as dry as possible. So it's great to be able to keep the dehumidifier going even when the mains power is out. Power cuts, power outages are generally pretty unusual where I live, but the current geopolitical situation may change all that, so having a power source on hand that can keep a freezer full of food from thawing as well as you getting on with your DIY is probably not a bad idea. So if you're interested in seeing what Flourescents power station solutions can do for you, you can check them out with a link in the description down below. Thanks so much for Flourescents for letting me take a look at this. So with the lighting frames all primed and painted up, I'm moving them back here into the workshop to wire them up. The electrician doing the workshop rewire will do all the final tests and connections, but I wanted to get the basics done at bench level rather than trying to do everything overhead. I've got a mix of directly driven panels and ones that need a transformer, a driver, and I've opted to keep the transformer ones as the ones that are switchable. Those panels are a little bit brighter, so it makes sense to have those switched off when I'm trying to make the workshop darker, a little more moody for these talking head videos. The wiring isn't complex. The power comes in and is switched on the live side to a switch that'll be by the door, and the end panel is switched independently with a small architrave switch on the frame. I may change these or add in Wi-Fi enabled smart relays. I just wanted to see them working with simple mechanical switches first. Now, the ceiling in the new workshop is made from reinforced concrete beams that would be tough to drill into, but when I was temporarily fitting the batten lights so that I could get the painting done, I found I could just hammer a little wooden wedge into the gaps between the beams and drive a screw into that. If that seems a little bit sketchy, I'll just say that the light frames in here are just glued to the ceiling with PU adhesive and hot glue, and they've held up just fine. So anyway, I've cut myself some little wooden wedges from a piece of whatever thicker hardwood I have. I think this is a bit of Iroko, and I cut these using the time-honored cut and turn it over method with a sliding table on the little table saw, making this quick, easy and safe too. And with those wedges in hand, I can take the frame back into the new workspace to get it fitted. I've already measured up and marked roughly where the center is on the ceiling, and there's a conveniently located smoke detector that I can locate the first frame just the other side of. Another person would have been a real help here, but these lightweight one-handed props really come into their own, even if they could use a drop of oil. And with the frames in the right position, I can get the wedges hammered in. cut flush with my cordless Parkside multi-tool. And then get the brackets fitted, first screwed to the ceiling and then to the frame. Note that I'm using repair washers here, as the slots in the metal brackets are quite large for the relatively small screws that I'm using, and the repair washer gives a bit more confidence in the fixings. That said, there's very little weight in the LED panels or the wooden frames, so I'm fine with 5 steel brackets and each frame, and if it looks like they need more, I can add them in later on, but I'm happy with them for now. With the first frame fitted and working, I can move on to the next, getting it secured to the ceiling in the same way, using my laser as a guide for the center and a string line on the left-hand side too. I drilled 20mm holes for the conduit using a simple wooden template to keep it consistent between the frames, so they do need to line up reasonably well. Then it's the electrics looping the live and neutral from the first frame, along with a switch live, both in conduit between them. With this frame, only the end panel will be independently switched, though that could change when I actually get in there and start shooting video for real. And connections checked and lights working, then it's rinse and repeat for the final frame. Making the connections between them, and finally bringing the switched live down to just by the door, again in conduit, and fitting the main switch. And this is the story so far. With all the lights on, it's a pretty bright workspace, and by switching the panels off creates a bit more visual depth for when I'm doing this type of video. There'll be shelves and cabinets on the back wall, and there'll be task lighting with some colored LEDs, but that's for another day after the rewire, which is after the floor goes down, and which is why I'm doing this now. I need lights in the workshop for the guys to be able to level the floor, but while it all sets, I need to be able to switch the lights off by the door, as I won't be able to get into the sockets if I still have my temporary lights up. There is logic to it, I promise, but I'll call this one done for today. Thanks so much for taking a look. As always, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.